It's important that people know we are not seeing an increase in patient volume. There is a trend, and the trend is headed in the wrong direction.
Clear change in tune tonight from the governor when it comes to battling COVID-19 in Arizona.
That's right. Governor Ducey acknowledging the numbers are not in a good place while also announcing changes. ABC 15's Nicole Valdez with how the National Guard will now help with contact tracing.
But first, Zach Crenshaw kicking off our team coverage tonight with the new local mask mandates and some state recommendations now turned requirements. Zach?
A little more than a month ago, Governor Ducey said,
"We are clearly on the other side of this pandemic."
Wednesday, though,
"We are not out of the woods, and the trend is headed in the wrong direction. And the actions that we're going to take are intended to change that direction and reverse this trend."
The governor has repeatedly touted his less heavy-handed approach.
"Our timing has been later, and our touch has been lighter."
Those decisions made solely by the governor, who said this last week when asked about letting local leaders create mandates.
"I will continue to believe that the government closest to the people is best, except in a global pandemic. We want to have clarity and consistency."
But 6 days and thousands of new cases later, Governor Ducey pulling a 180.
"We are going to change and update guidance so that local governments can implement mask and face covering policies and determine enforcement."
The move comes after leaders from across the state have been pleading for more action or local authority.
I want to thank the mayors for their input.
Already, mayors from Tucson to Mesa to Flagstaff are mandating masks, and Phoenix will vote at its next council meeting. Ducey also making changes statewide, as recommendations are now requirements.
Requirements for restaurants and businesses to enforce physical distancing, to ensure that there are safeguards in place to prevent transmission.
Even with his familiar talking points, the governor's tone was different.
"We do have capacity, but the increase, the direction, the cases are all concerning."
And for the first time in more than 100 days, Ducey publicly wore a face mask. It was a noted change, as the governor looks to shift the behavior of Arizonans, and with it, the spread of COVID-19.
"We have successfully slowed the spread of COVID-19 in the past. We're going to successfully slow COVID-19 again."
So, Zach, we heard a lot about mandates and requirements today. We also touched on enforcement, but how's that going to work?
Yeah, well, the answers are still a little bit unclear, especially when it comes to cities mandating masks. The governor says it's going to be up to local leaders, but, enforcement and actual punishments could look very different in Phoenix than they do in Tucson, depending on how those cities handle it. As for the business and restaurant requirements that were recommendations in the past, well, the governor says he still favors an education-first approach, but as we've seen in the past, local police and law enforcement can cite businesses if they refuse to comply. Steve?
We will see how that goes. Thank you, Zach. On the topic of masks,